Welcome to the Notes to My Legal Self AI Insights, where law and AI collide. Get ready to level up your legal game with us. We've got career advice, cutting edge developments, mind blowing legal tech, and more. Know someone making waves in the legal AI world? Nominate them, or even nominate yourself. We love courageous souls. And don't forget, we want to hear from you too. Ask questions, drop comments. Let's build a community of legal superheroes. But here's the deal. We're all about to have a blast. AI may be serious, but we're here to make it fun. So buckle up, get ready to power up, and let's embark on this exciting journey together. Now, let's introduce your fearless host, Olga Mack. Get ready to dive into the awesomeness of Notes to My Legal Self AI Insights. Let's go.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. And if you feel like something is different, it is different. I have a new camera and mic. My husband decided to tune in and watch me one day, and as someone who is working in sound industry and video industry, I got feedback that I look better in real life. And he tried to do justice for me, and here we are with new camera and new mic. So very excited to have this conversation with someone I've been following for a long time, someone you probably already know. And without further ado, Jordan, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Olga. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where this finds you today. My name is Jordan Furlong. I am a legal sector analyst, forecaster, consultant. I'm still working on some other nouns. Eventually, I'll find one that actually, summarizes them all quite nicely. I am based in Ottawa, Canada, and I write and I speak and I advise organizations with regard to what's changing in the legal marketplace, spoiler alert, everything, and what I think we can all do about it.
Oh, I love it. Isn't it a good time to be an analyst in the legal industry? I guess I will ask
Oh
that.
yeah, no, it absolutely is, and the great thing is there are so many other people involved in this right now. I mean, when I first got involved in this area, which is like a good maybe 15 plus years ago, and it was a fairly small number of just bloggers at that point who would be writing and talking about this sort of thing, and there's now so many more voices and so many more perspectives coming into this market, and from all the different angles and the different sectors of the market and the different needs that have to be met. So it really is it's a golden age. As far as I'm concerned, for insight and information about the legal sector, it's a blast.
Welcome to Renaissance, everyone. Welcome to Renaissance, you all. I love that. So maybe you acknowledge that legal sector is large and has many facets and various parts of it behave differently. What is your focus in terms of sectors and maybe geographies and in terms of
Hmm,
stakeholders and players? Is this the
yeah.
purchasers, the vendors, the builders? Tell me how do you focus as an analyst?
Yeah, it's a good question. Geographically, I'm sort of focused generally on Canada and the US, although I've been fortunate enough to, in the past and in the future, do some work in Europe and to speak with audiences on other continents as well. So that's been terrific. In terms of the people I'm interested in speaking with, number one, anybody who's, anybody who's willing to bend the ear and listen. I'm very much focused on legal professionals and lawyers who are doing their best to serve their clients, to run their businesses, and to survive and manage their way to navigate all the waves that are going past us with incredible speed. But I'm also really interested these days in speaking with policymakers, which would include regulators and governments and law school deans and organizations that are really in charge of setting the stage and helping to program the ways in which we all go about our business. One of the things that I'm messages I'm hoping to send and have been hoping to send for a while is business as usual in the legal sector absolutely isn't working. It is not serving hardly anyone's interest. We can do better than this. We need to do better than this. And I'm kind of just out here making suggestions.
And hopefully it's gone. Business as usual, right? I mean, I think that's kind of the main headline. If you're holding on to something, it's like holding on to, I don't know, Pony Express.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I have sympathy. I mean, every lawyer I've met is obviously they're working hard. They got their heads down. They're blasting through all the stuff. You got stuff coming at you from everywhere. You don't have time to, look up and look around and say, "Oh wow, look at look at that, a tsunami! How exciting!" Right? So one of the things that I think I can do, and I try to help do, is to give people a bit of a sense of this is what's happening. This is what's changing in the world around us, and here's the best advice I have for you to make those adjustments. And not just for you, because I am very interested in, and I'm a lawyer myself, I'm very interested in helping lawyers in the legal profession, but I am specifically interested in helping out clients, which is to say people who actually can afford lawyers and legal help, and the much broader public, which includes the 80 to 90% of people who do not and cannot access a lawyer, but who have the same justice needs and the same law related life problems that clients have as well.
So, how does one get up in the morning and decide to be an analyst for the legal industry, especially as a practicing lawyer? There had to be some sort of event that inspired this.
Wow. Well, I can tell you, you definitely don't wake up in the
I,
morning.
I could I could have said what happened in your childhood, but I'm not gonna go that deep.
We don't have that kind of time. Well, I can tell you, it really was a process of fortuitous circumstances. Lawyer by training, called to the bar. I worked very briefly here in Canada for a large law firm. They were very helpful enough to inform me early on that I was not cut out for that line of work, which was, very accurate assessment. And I kind of wandered into legal journalism, trade journalism, and worked as a writer and then as an editor of three different legal periodicals here in Canada for a space of about 13, 14 years. And during that time, this is when I really kind of came to look much more closely at the legal marketplace and the legal sector. And as I mentioned earlier, I would look at it and say, this isn't working for anybody, right? The clients you speak with are all dissatisfied with the hours and the time and the money and the bad communication and the service. People who can't even get through the door to see a lawyer are unhappy. But even the lawyers are overworked and kind of miserable and stressed all the time. I speak to judges these days; they're in the same kind of boat. So I'm like, this isn't working for anybody. Why are we doing it this way? And that got
It's
that
not me, it's you. Wait, it's not you or me, it's us.
Well, it's honestly right. It's rampant throughout the sector, and that's when I began kind of writing about these sorts of issues, and for me, kind of doing diagnostics and recommendations, and that started with the blogging in the mid to late 2000s, and that led to people calling up and saying, "Hey, would you like to talk at our event about these issues?" And I'd say, "Sure, yeah," and they'd say, "That's great. How much do you charge?" And that was news to me, that this was something you could actually do for a living, keep a roof over your head. So yeah, it really was fortuitous. And people who've heard me talk about this before will know one of my favorite quotes is from Douglas Adams, the British author who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, who's got a wonderful line in one of his books. He says, "I may not have gotten where I intended to go, but I think I wound up where I needed to be." And that's kind of how I feel about where I am right now.
I love that. So I've read some of your stuff and I listened to you a few times, and I think you and I share an agreement that the system is crumbling.
Yeah.
Curious, first of all, is there an agreement on that? And
Mhm.
two, tell me if so, how?
Yeah, I absolutely do think we're in agreement on that, and I think the infrastructure of legal services is crumbling. Now, it is still very large and very massive, and it's not going to fall apart tomorrow, and it's not going to fall apart all at once, right? Decay doesn't work that way. Deterioration doesn't work that way. All of them, boom, it's gone, like the Death Star, right? But when you look, as I said earlier, at all the myriad ways in which it is not functioning to its potential, when we have, again, multiple surveys from multiple countries indicating that the universe of law related life and business problems, only about 10 to 15% of those ever get dealt with by a lawyer, and very few of them get very far into the justice system. So, right off the bat, we have something which most of us would acknowledge is a universal need for legal help, which is available only essentially on a luxury basis. It is something that only a few people and businesses can afford to engage with. So that's not working. The wellness crisis in the legal profession. We've seen a number of studies come out recently talk about how messed up lawyers are these days, and to be sure, I don't want to lay all the blame at the feet of the legal profession, although it's sometimes fun to do that. But when you look at the larger institutions, the courts, right? Underfunded and understaffed, and you literally see in some countries literally crumbling infrastructure, roofs falling in, caving in, and infestations of animals in the walls of courthouses, and it's crazy that we have let it get to this point. And we let it get to this point, I think, honestly, mostly through negligence and a degree of oversight, but just by letting things continue on as they were. If there's one original sin, to my mind, in the legal sector that lawyers, I think, are guilty of contributing to, it's this sense of just letting things keep going. We know they're not great. We know it could be better, but you know what? We just keep doing what you're doing. And it's that I really want to try to arrest. And it's not just me. I talk to so many people, and I'm fortunate to have so many conversations with people who are very much of the same mind. Let's change our whole approach to this.
Yeah, isn't it fascinating how well-meaning people can and rational people and who actually go to law school specifically to do good as opposed to merely just make money. I mean, enough of us go to make money
Mhm.
too.
Oh
Those are
yeah.
not mutually exclusive things, but you really, if money is the main motivator, you will likely end up, I don't know, business school, more likely.
Yeah.
So there is a definition of justice you have when you go to law school, and likely believe in that concept one way or another.
Hmm.
And then we end up with what we end up. And then we occasionally have sort of black swan events. We had pandemic that kind of
Hmm.
had its own push. I'm not going to go all the way there. That's a dark history
Hmm.
in our life. But let's talk about Gen AI, because Gen AI
Hmm.
has a sort of renaissance around it. New things are possible, and it's pushing everything. And legal industry is easy to push because it
Hmm.
is so behind. So
Yeah.
what is the impact of this renaissance of Gen AI?
Okay, so in one respect, obviously it's extraordinary. I mean, for a lot of us, it's the most amazing technology we've seen in our lifetime. For me, only the internet. I can still remember how mind blown I was to say, "Do you mean this mail can go through the computer system and someone else can read it? Oh my, that's amazing, right?" And it was
Hey, I
actually
was
really
excited
cool.
about cat
Yeah,
videos. Okay, I'm much easily
there.
impressed. I mean, I was waiting 5 minutes to see cute cats, so I'm much more easily impressed. But yes, I agree with you.
Oh
Maybe the
yeah.
only one that is more exciting was internet.
Absolutely, right. And so generative AI is of a different, it's of similar kind of impact, but a different grade or league in a lot of ways. Now, when you and I were talking about what we would discuss today, and you sort of said, well, what would be a nice title for this? And I gave the somewhat cheeky name that we gave to this, which was is not actually about the AI. And I think it's probably worth some explanation, because on the one hand, like I say, it's a potentially world changing technology, especially because we don't yet know. As I said to someone the other day, it's not just we don't even know what the ceiling of generative AI is, we don't even know what the floor is yet. We don't know what's the minimum it's capable of. We are very early in this process. And the opportunities that it offers us are just amazing. At the same time, though, I don't tend to get that. I mean, I'm excited by it. I think it's cool, but I'm not that wrapped up in it, because I think fundamentally it's a catalyst to bring about changes in all the other aspects which have been around for quite some time, right? It's it when What generative AI does is it shines a light, and it exposes very bleakly in so many respects all the ways in which we are kind of falling short and we could do better. The massive productivity flaws within law firms, the inability or unwillingness of those of us in the legal sector to encourage the demand side of legal services, not just the supply. All these different areas, it's the fundamental, what's the old song, the fundamental things apply as time goes by, right? It's still all that generative AI has done is give us an extraordinary tool, an extraordinary means to look fresh and to work fresh in this area. I think I want to take advantage of that tool. I think we absolutely have to make the most of it, that we absolutely can. But let's not think that it's going to magically solve all of our problems. Only we can do that, and only we can do that by turning our minds and our efforts to actually taking them seriously.
That's a great point. Tools are not inherently evil or good. It is we humans what we do with them and how we use them. And I tend to agree with you that what this Gen AI revolution has done, I tend to agree with you that it won't solve every problem we have, not even majority, not even the most important, not even some that are that maybe some, but not all of them.
Mhm.
But it did take a black box and transformed it into a fish tank
Yeah, that's nice. I like that.
and really made it visible. The flaws very visible. Specifically, let's focus on the flaws in the business models in
Sure.
law.
Yeah.
What do you think are the flaw? I'm guessing we have an agreement that business models must be upgraded, updated,
Mhm.
up, whatever. Where would you focus? What is the sort of top things we as lawyers should be focusing on?
All right. Well, an initial point to make, I think, and I mentioned this in one of my Substack pieces a few months back. If law firms were run in ways that focused on value delivered and outcomes produced for clients rather than on input measures such as hours worked and money brought in and so forth, which, as we all know, is the are the engine and running lights of law firms. Generative AI wouldn't be a threat. It wouldn't be a disruption. It would be an amazing facilitation technology. It's like, oh my gosh, look, we can now deliver more value than we did before.
So let
We
me
can.
ask you this. I hear this value a lot and I love
Uh-huh.
it. As a businesswoman, I
Hmm.
never will charge for my hours. I'll charge an impact on your life.
Hmm.
Do you think that will make my services cheaper to you?
Oh no. I mean, well, this is it. If you are one of the things I've been saying to law firms is that look, why you sell is hours of effort by your lawyers and other wage earners. And that's not a criticism. That's literally a description of every law firm bill I've ever received, right? Because the dollar amount is not underneath the thing that was done. The dollar amount is underneath the number of hours that was taken to do it. It's your inventory. And one of the things that this technology does, not the only thing by any measure, but one of the things it does, it is going to accelerate and compress the time and effort required in order to get legal work done. And
Okay.
if that's
So
what you're selling, you got a problem.
let me ask you this, and I'm sorry to interrupt
No, no.
because it kind of goes back to having bar
Hmm.
telling you that you have to charge reasonable prices
Hmm. Yeah.
and essentially setting up a system where when you charge by the hour of effort, that's
Hmm.
probably the most quote unquote reasonable thing you can
Hmm.
do.
Hmm.
That self-regulation
Hmm.
leads to pricing model that would not be anywhere else in any other industry as opposed to value-based pricing, because I think we both agree that if many lawyers were charging by value they provide, that would be more expensive, not less.
Hmm. Okay, so here's the thing with the billable hour. Number one, it is not an inherently fundamentally evil thing, right? The billable hour is a proxy measure of value. And the reason we have a proxy is that if you ask a client, how much is this worth to you? In most cases, they don't have a clue. And I guarantee you the lawyer doesn't know either, right? I mean, you can go through a lengthy process of determining what the value is of any given legal service or legal outcome, but that's a lot of time and effort, which most clients and most lawyers don't have the time or interest for. So we have defaulted to this proxy of the billable hour because it goes back to long held ideas that the longer and harder you work at something, the more that it's worth. And that goes back to our pre industrial revolution times. Okay, that's fine. In the absence of a way to measure it by value, this is what we kind of default to. Now, again, when you measure your work and when you reward your workers according to time and effort, you get a certain kind of business model. When you reward and charge and pay for outcomes, you get a different one. My belief is that generative AI is going to help push us, most of the law practices, away from the first kind and more towards the second. And it might not even be a value based pricing arrangement. I'm working on a piece about this. I haven't nailed it down fully, but I have a theory that we're heading not so much to billable pricing or value pricing, but what you might call relationship pricing. What is the relationship between the lawyer and the client worth for as long as that relationship continues, which might be just a one-off for one operation or one job, or it could be an ongoing, ideally, ongoing relationship of legal advice and information. So it's just getting us to think differently and act differently in these regards.
Yeah, I've heard the commentary around Olga, charging an hour in 6 minutes in increments is just easy. It's
Mhm.
objective.
Yeah.
You can point to the various tasks you've done, and it complies with reasonable pricing requirements of self-regulation.
Mhm.
It's sort of a laziest man um, billing, I suppose, or charging.
Mhm.
Interesting you pointed out to relationship billing. Tell me more about that. What is your definition of that, and how do you expect it to be rolled out, operationalized, institutionalized, and go forward?
Yeah, I don't know, and this is why I say I don't have it written yet. I'm still kind of banging. Half of my days are spent banging ideas off the walls here to see what comes back. But I think that it's a question of where's the we talk about value, right? But as to say, value is a very difficult thing to granularize. I don't know if that's a word or not, but I'm going to make one up. It's difficult. So we need to get. I'm handling an estate for my cousin who died unexpectedly, and I'm worried about this particular aspect of it, and I'm afraid that some of the dependents are going to get mad at me. What should I do about that? What's that worth in dollar terms to the person in that position? There's no way to calculate that. And even if you could, you get a different calculation for 100 different people in that situation. So I think when you get down to that granular level, pricing for value doesn't really work. What I suspect it does work is if you pull the camera back and think about the whole relationship of, this is a piece I just wrote last week, the whole delivery by the lawyer of three critical functions, which is to advise, to advocate, and most of all, to accompany. Right? The lawyer is your companion. The lawyer is with you throughout the process of whatever it is. If you've got a problem that needs solving, you have an opportunity that needs grasping, if you've got a headache that needs relieving, whatever, the lawyer is with you from point A to point B. What's the value of having someone with you for that period of time? Now we can sort of say, all right, maybe we have something which makes a bit more because people can get a better sense of the value they get from having a trusted advisor who helps them out. They can count on, they'll keep their secrets, they'll do the stuff that needs to be done. You can get a better sense of that sort of a thing. And keep in mind, again, when we talk about the billable hour, yes, it drives, I think, the wrong kinds of behaviors on lawyer sides. It doesn't really work for clients' interests in quick, speedy service. But if the average lawyer's billable hour rate was $10 an hour or $20 an hour, I don't think clients would be complaining about the hourly rate, right? So let's not forget that it's not just a question of the type of pricing that takes place, it's the quantum as well. And a lot of clients will say, I get that I got to pay money for a lawyer, but I feel like I'm paying an awful lot.
Yeah, but less than the value, so we're good, no?
Well, and that's what it is. And it's that maturity of discussion, maturity of conversation that we need, and that for the most part we do not have. One thing I would love to see institutionalized within the legal profession, you talk about things we train people to do. I would be encouraging private practice lawyers invest as much time as you possibly can upfront at the start of the relationship. Have conversations, send an extensive retainer letter, talk about the retainer letter, get everybody on the same page at the start, set expectations so that we all know what's going on. But we don't tend to do that. We tend to rush into the work, we tend to rush into the deliverables. It's like, no, set the parameters first, build the relationship at the start, create a framework for the relationship, and everybody has a better sense at that point going forward of what will be involved. That's
Interesting. I
maturity.
do wanna talk about AI impact on training. I think that's
Yeah.
definitely important, but I'm still processing this lawyer as a companion. I don't
Hmm.
know. Do I
Hmm.
I'm thinking of a, German Shepherd here. And I'm thinking, "Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe
Oh,
maybe charging an hour is not so bad." I'm not sure if I want to be everyone's companion. That's
well, yeah. And you know what? And if I,
meeting everyone's my clients if I were to practice law. Maybe it's a semantics, but
Mhm.
interesting. I will note, maybe let me give you maybe one observation
Mhm.
besides the sort of companionship issue, is that today we actually do not normally charge for relationship building.
Mhm.
That is something that you, as a quote unquote rainmaker, do
Mhm.
to get to what you describe as deliverables and milestones, the things we charge for.
Mhm.
And I wonder, in this because you kind of want to design the whole framework for a relationship. I'm Olga. This is how you have relationship with Olga. This
Hmm.
is my framework. This is your job. This is my job.
Hmm.
This is this is what we're gonna achieve. This is how I'm gonna be available. This is how I'm gonna serve you. This is how honest you will be with me. I don't know,
Hmm.
all of those
Yeah.
things. Today we don't charge for that.
Hmm.
And I wonder, and then I think you're a proponent of, hey, every good relationship starts with good sort of ground rules
Hmm.
and a framework and rules of the game. And that gives everyone certainty to know what's happening next and how long to keep that relationship. All of that sounds good, except we're not
Hmm.
charging for this today.
Hmm.
And I wonder, would that be problematic for the bar rules? Just because you're technically not delivering services yet.
Hmm.
You're dating, you're not
Yeah.
marrying.
Yeah, yeah. No, no. And if it took me 10 hours to establish that relationship properly, and I sent a client for a bill for 10 hours at $300 an hour, the client would hit the roof, and properly so, right? But this is part of the thing that I think a lot of lawyers don't fully appreciate. You got to build the framework, you got to build the context for clients to come to you, right? And to work with you and to make a successful operation. You're you know the doctor doesn't just the first time you see him, doctor doesn't like open up and start operating, right? There's a lengthy conversation of understanding what are your options, what are we facing, what are we looking at, what are the rules that follow all these aspects. But my point is that when you invest in, if you're going to serve someone as a lawyer in a professional capacity, you have, I think anyway, you have an ethical obligation to establish a relationship with this person, a relationship of respect, a relationship of trust, to show that you are trusting this person and you invite them to place their trust in you as well, and focusing on that person's issues. And you cannot have that short of a conversation, maybe even a
No, I
lengthy
think there's
conversation.
a lot of agreement for that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I absolutely. I mean, lawyers who are successful and paid the most as the relationship holders. We have Veronica basically tell you, exactly the same in agreement. Establishing relationship is the way to go. If I were in private practice today, I would spend a significant amount of time doing that and figuring out how to actually do the work, either with the help of others. And she's following up with more information that she would not pay without relationship. We see that
Hmm.
is not a controversial statement.
Hmm.
Where it becomes more controversial when we want to sort of extend that relationship building,
Hmm.
make a price around that, and
Hmm.
and really kind of figuring out this monetization of what, and I'm gonna use the word companionship that
Hmm.
has way too many connotations.
Okay.
Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And today we don't have a culture for that, and frankly, I think there is a challenge with bar rules around that.
Oh well, yeah. So challenge the bar rules for almost anything sensible we would like to do. And if you don't like companionship, go with accompaniment, because I think that accomplishes much the same work. But again, Olga, just to make the point, when you have a system whereby everything that you do is measured in 6-minute increments and you have to record it, and it's got to go somewhere, right? And ideally, it's going to go to the client so that someone's going to pay you for all this time. If you have that kind of mindset, then every minute you spend establishing those ground rules of relationships with your client is a wasted minute. It's wasted time and effort. And so when you move away from thinking about in terms of time and effort and move towards thinking this entire relationship we have is going to be worth X dollars, right? And the lawyer can says, my sense is it's the start to finish, I'm going to suggest is 5 grand, and I will send you a retainer letter saying it's going to be 5 grand, and for that 5 grand I'm doing A, B, C, D, and E. Now let's also be clear, I'm not doing F, I'm not doing G, and if you want to do H or I, we can talk about that. And if J or K happens, then we have to open this whole thing up again, because you know what? Sometimes these things get complicated. It's then, especially if you're doing anything with regard to litigation or conflicts. But that is the kind of, but we're not trained for that. We're not educated for that. We're not prepared for that. And business model doesn't run like that. So this is what I mean. I get back to this idea, right? We've been talking for 15 minutes and we haven't said a word about AI, because it's not about the AI. It's about how we go
I
about
love
being
the
lawyers.
illustration of that point. Absolutely. And it's not about AI. It's about going from black box to fish tank and staring at the glaring flaws.
Yeah.
So I promised to you that we would talk about education and
Mm,
use the word AI to get us there. What
hmm
is the impact of Gen AI and the flaws that are exposed on the education of
Okay.
lawyers and
Yeah.
legal professionals?
Okay. So we don't have anywhere close to the amount of time for me to go, to take you through a guided tour of everything I see that's wrong with lawyer formation, which includes education, training, bar admission, bar exam, early years of practice. It is a extraordinarily fascinating dumpster fire. But the short version in terms of AI's impact, number one, it's going to mess up law school, which is actually good because law school could use some messing up on this point. Because law schools have said for quite some time, we don't prepare people to become lawyers. We are interested in teaching them how to think like a lawyer. Okay, guess what? For the moment they start practicing, in fact, they don't start this well before this, your lawyers are going to think your graduates are going to think like lawyers using AI. They're going to ask it questions. They're going to use it as a sounding board, as an information resource, as a tool for getting stuff done. If you're not also using AI in some fashion within your courses, within your curriculum, and there are some law schools out there that are doing a good job in leading the way on that point, then it's not just a question of you're preparing people poorly for practice. We already know they're doing that. But you're not in the same ballpark anymore. You're not in the same city. You're teaching them stuff using tools that they will never use and approaches that they will rarely ever employ. So all you're really doing is spending 3 years and charging them hundreds of thousands of dollars as a gatekeeper to a profession that you got, frankly, no business being the gatekeeper of.
I love that. So let me think through this. What I love about this Gen AI and frankly various other cumulative revolutions, evolutions,
Hmm.
changes we've had now for a while is an inflood of other professionals,
Hmm.
technical
Yeah.
professionals, data professionals, designers, everyone.
Hmm.
I think that's a great thing.
Oh.
It really adds more talent and perspectives. And law schools do not teach you that.
Mm,
It's something that you may encounter in the wild, depending where you work very quickly or not so quickly.
mhm,
How can AI influence this relationship with other professionals
mhm,
to maybe change the pace of innovation or pace of change
mhm.
in law, bigger, faster, sooner,
Yeah.
cheaper?
Well, yeah, I mean, and there's no question law schools don't encourage collaboration with other professionals. Law schools don't encourage collaboration with other lawyers, right? When you're in law school, you are in a fight to the death, or at least a fight to the A's with, everybody else in your class. It's a highly competitive environment, which is no surprise that people come into the profession geared to this idea of treating everybody around them as, someone who's going to, the better they do, the worse I do. It's a zero sum thinking. So again, another reason for us to take this and toss it out the window. Okay. Pardon me. So, but when you look at it in terms of the opportunities that generative AI offer to us in this regard, okay, one of them is just anything we can do to get lawyers past this idea that the only useful resource and the only helpful professional is a lawyer. We talk about other professionals, right? And we have a term in
Wait,
the
there's
law.
more to life than lawyers?
Well, this is the problem, right? I mean, I often say this kind of thing in presentations when when I talk about, well, there's non-lawyers, or as I like to refer to them, normal people, right? Or people will do just fine, right? So there's a level of class-based elitism which is laughably
Yeah,
widespread in the
you
law.
can have you can by reverse you can call, I guess, lawyers non-people.
Oh yeah, well, okay, I don't want to go that far
Applying the same
precisely.
logic, sometimes you lead
Yeah.
get to
Well,
conclusion
well, let's just say we can call them other people because that's who they are,
or
and
not
that's
normal people.
I just like it when we can be nicer to people who aren't lawyers. And I see all the time, especially in law firms, lawyers sometimes going out of their way to be unpleasant or condescending to people who aren't lawyers. It's a really bad cultural habit ingrained
It's
in
not
this
a
profession.
cultural habit, Jordan. It's actually more than that.
Okay.
The word non-lawyer is part of the model of rules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's an and word that is institutionalized.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a culture problem.
Hmm.
It is an institutional problem that, part of culture too.
Well, I would
But
say they're kind of the same.
it is very much the official word used in the ABA model rules. I mean, one
Yeah.
of the things I wanted to do now for a long time, I just didn't get around to, is to start a petition to take that word out.
Hmm. Oh yeah, go for it. I'd sign that.
I think that word does not belong in the fabric of practicing law. It's not a very inclusive word.
Hmm.
I would go as far as saying that it is derogatory, but it's not just what you learn in law school. It
Hmm.
is it is part of who we are as lawyers. Our governing rules and documents
Hmm.
contain that word.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not just a question of it's not inclusive, it is literally exclusive, right? It starts with a non. And as I'm fond of saying, I've never heard a nurse talk about non nurses or a plumber talk about non plumbers, right? It's just this thing that we have in the law. And it is very much, and yeah, you can say institution, I'll say culture. We're basically saying the same thing, which is this is the remnants of centuries of guild thinking. That has infected our profession for a long time, and we can and need to do better with that. So, and yes, part of that is going to be having people and helping lawyers and helping us institutionally with regard to our bars and our regulators and so forth take a different approach. And you know what it's really about? It's about moving the center of gravity, the center of focus in this legal sector away from us, because we make everything orbit around us like pre-Galilean society. The sun orbited around the earth. You know what? We're not the sun. Sun's over there somewhere. I think the sun's called the public good. I think the sun's called the public interest. I think the sun is called the clients and the people who need us and the people that we are here to help. That's where I want to see all of our regulation refocused and move our approach over that way. Because I guarantee you, if it wasn't lawyers writing all these rules and deciding all these things, we sure wouldn't have the term non-lawyer anywhere in this material. The fact we call it non-lawyer because as lawyers, we don't have a word to describe people who aren't us. And I think that's telling.
Yeah, it's some toddler thinking. I think
Mhm.
that's what's happening. I love it. I guess maybe we're coming close to the end, and maybe the last question around. We talked about everybody. We talked about lawyers, law schools, law students, clients. We didn't talk about the regulators. Do you
Yeah.
have any words of wisdom for the infinite words of wisdom
Oh,
for the bars?
oh,
That institution, will that institution be changing? And how these guys can buckle up and brace for the future?
well, I can't promise wisdom, and I guarantee you it is not infinite. It is extremely finite. I actually just wrote a piece this morning about that touched upon regulation and AI and the ways in which these two things go together in my Substack. But if we're talking really broad terms, you mentioned self-regulation a couple of times. Self-regulation is a privilege that the legal profession has been granted by various levels of government, be it a legislature or a court, in decades or centuries past. We have come, I think, as lawyers to look upon it as something that we are entitled to as a right, and it's not the case whatsoever. We are very fortunate to have been in a position for a long time, not just to make decisions about ourselves, but to make decisions about the entire marketplace in which we operate. And I said this again on my note today, the fact that the state bar regulations and law societies here in Canada and other regulators around the world, with very few exceptions, the message that they send to the public at large is say, hey, if you need legal assistance, you have two options. The first is a lawyer, if you can find one, and if you can hire them. Okay. And your second option is nothing. And that's it, right? That is the only thing. So the 10% of you who can afford to get a lawyer, happy day. We have a whole bunch of them here and they charge by the hour, and isn't that delightful? And for the rest of you, well, sucks to be you, doesn't it? Right. So, and again, that's not acceptable. It's just flat out not. And the fact that it has continued for as long as it has, we are fortunate that we haven't actually had governments, populist or otherwise, pouring in through the doorway saying, we'll take that self-regulation away from you, thank you very much, and give it to people who actually have the public interest in mind. This is a real danger. is to my mind, for the legal profession, because there are certain ways in which I do want us to maintain control over our profession in terms of our independence from the state, our ability to give independent advice, to be able to work with solicitor client confidentiality. These things are all really important. But if we are not more careful, a lot more careful, we'll find all of that wiped out. And people and governments and the people coming in and saying, you can't be trusted with this power. You can't be trusted to act in the public interest. So we're going to take care of that for you. Thanks for coming out.
Okay, I love it. Definite. I'm not sure if it's finite or infinite, but it's definitely strong.
Well,
So
I can promise that much at least.
I love that. Yeah, I want to see what happens to our bars and how we self-regulate and what's the future of that. I definitely see some value in that because, especially because of sort of confidentiality aspect of it. But the toddler thinking for me is just overwhelming. And I think it is really the root cause of a lot of challenges. Jordan, we covered a lot of things and we haven't gotten to what, like 90% of my questions. So,
Sorry.
and
Sorry.
we still talked a lot for a very long time. And I really had a good time. We covered a lot of ground. I guess I'll ask you, if I may,
Mhm.
for one takeaway you want listeners to take from this conversation.
Uh, you know what?
One.
One,
One.
one. Okay, okay. One. Here it is. And this is something which it's fresh in my mind because I just wrote it today at the end of my piece. It's like I mentioned at the start how we have been content to just let things go and keep on going in the law, even as we can sense the deterioration and decay around us. What I want to invest in the legal profession is a sense of agency, to say we can do something about this, you can do something about this, I can do something about this. There's a kind of a low level sense of helplessness I get sometimes with the lawyers. Just say they shrug, oh, what are you going to do? You can't do this, you can't do that. No, we can do this. And if we don't do this now, there's not going to be anybody else around with the next generation to do it for us. So I want lawyers to stand up. I mean, I'm standing up now, right? And I can look really stupid sometimes up here standing up on myself, which is fine. Looking stupid is not something I'm unaccustomed to. But I would love to see more people, and I do see more people standing up and saying, no, we're not going to keep doing things the way we have in the past. We're going to do them better. And it is possible, it's necessary, it is deeply desirable. That, I guess, would be a parting thought for me today.
Oh, I love that. Say no to helplessness. I mean, that's what we tell our clients.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Jordan, thank you so much. I am completely with you. The the learned helplessness is definitely part of of the profession, and it's amazing. I talk to lawyers, very powerful people who run industries, move markets, and that low level, sometimes I actually think it's more high level of learned helplessness is mind blowing.
Mm, yeah, and we can
Just
change that.
we could and should and must change that. On that bright note, thank you everyone for joining. Say no to the high, low, or medium level of helplessness and go change the world. See you one. Bye.
That brings us to the end of another thrilling episode on the Notes to My Legal Self AI Insights. We had a fantastic time exploring the fascinating intersection of law and AI with you. But hold on tight because the adventure doesn't stop here. Stay connected with us on social media to continue the conversation, share your thoughts, and be part of our incredible community of legal enthusiasts. Together, we can inspire, learn, and make a real impact on the world of law and AI. If you enjoyed today's episode, we encourage you to share it with your friends, colleagues, and anyone else who could benefit from the exciting insights we discussed. Let's spread the knowledge and enthusiasm far and wide.